Our congregation, this little church in Bethesda, is in the middle of encouraging all of you to give what you can to our stewardship campaign for 2008. That means it's money-raising time, and I hate money-raising time. You don't know how I suffer through writing these sermons, but I try. I have to talk about it. We have to talk about it. Every one of you should have gotten a letter this last week, every one of you who've given us an updated mailing address, that is, encouraging you to prayerfully consider giving what support you can to this church to build up its ministries for the next year. It did something else as well. It asked not just for your financial gifts, but also for you to think about how you can apply the gifts, the personal gifts, the spiritual gifts, your skills, your talents, those things God has given you. Give those things to the church this coming year. Many of you are already doing a tremendous amount, but if you think you could do more, or you're called to do more, let us know. You can help build things up. And in that call, in that request for you to think about what you can give to the church, we're not, despite the context of the scripture I just read, asking you to give us half of your income like Zacchaeus gave to the poor when he promised Christ. Although it is tax deductible up to 50%, but you know, I'm not, you know. Think in these weeks realistically about our life together in this church, how much it matters to you, and how much you can give to support it. And we look out across this church, and a great deal has changed here. The face and character and nature of this church has transformed in the last 4 years. It's a different church than it was. Back in the 1990s, before many of you were here, and before some of you may have been born, this church was blessed with a modest endowment. That endowment has enabled us to do some necessary things to this building. Make sure we have heat. Make sure that when it rains, it's not raining inside as well as outside. Little things like that. It's allowed us to keep these doors open for worship. But that endowment is tied to how the stock markets do. Markets have been doing well. And we've been doing okay with that. Furthermore, every single year for the last 4 years, we have been cutting back on how much we're relying on that endowment. And that's a good thing. We're spending it down, but we're reducing its level. We are not cutting too deeply into the principle, the base of that endowment, to keep the heat on and to make sure your pastor has a nice shiny Beamer parked out front. That's not the case. Other people will get shiny Beamers, just not Jason. The fact is that we're using less of that endowment every year, and that's a good thing. Where once it was 90% of our budget, 90%. We've cut it down to 80%. This year, for the first time, we have really reduced the amount that we're pulling down on those funds. First time in a decade, we've cut it back. If we can increase our giving for 2008 by the same percentage that we did in 2007, we'll need that crutch even less. But 80% to 70% still means that we've got a long way to go before we are self-sufficient. Now, if we believed in gambling with our future, we'd take a look at that endowment and say, I don't need to give anything. God's going to take care of it. Look at all this cash other people have given. Don't need to do anything. Everything's going to be fine. The stock market's just going to keep on climbing up forever. It's easy to sit back and just trust that someone else has done the work for us. But the truth of the matter is different. It only takes one downturn in the market, one shift for a couple of years, if our giving doesn't keep growing. And this church could have no money at all in 5 years, in 6 years. Nothing left. And that's the reality of it. The fantasy that we can just go on forever as we are fantasy is a gambler's delusion. Because really building anything up at all, as we are striving to build this church up, each other up in this faith, those things don't come easily. It takes time, it takes commitment, it takes effort, it takes prayer. If we are to be good stewards over our life together, we have to allow ourselves to understand that it is never wise to gamble with things that matter, to gamble with things that we care about. Despised